Hey guys, Gordon Cockerpunk here. I'm trying to work on the sound thing. It's not going well, and unfortunately, I'm not going to buy anything to make it better unless I have another reason to buy it. So, today we're talking about a few different things. Links to modern guns in the Old School Guns tour. We got great beers. We got a lot of good things on the show right now. So if we enter a portion of the show that maybe you're not necessarily into, just keep pushing through. There's probably going to be some good juicy stuff in the show, no matter what you're talking about. So, first things first, right? We're talking about the Saga, right? The Saga. As I've mentioned before, this is from the Summit Brewing Company. That is a local one right here in St. Paul. Very famous Twin Cities brewery. Probably a large enough distribution that you guys can actually get this stuff, at least in the Midwest, if not other places. The Saga is a new one, and it's an IPA. As you guys probably know, I really enjoy IPAs. I really like them in general. And this one is actually really great. It does everything an IPA should do without being overboard. I like overboard IPAs like Furious and Bitter Brewer. These like insanely bitter, very citrus, like punch you in the face with flavor beers. But this one is a little bit more modest, a little bit more drinkable. Probably a better introduction into what a good IPA is. And I find it delicious. It's bitter and hoppy, but it's still flavorful and easy to drink. It's around 6.5 by volume, so it's not like it's gonna just plaster you out. But yeah, it's a good one. I really like that. The other Summit that I was saying, most of the time Summit beers just come in a little bit below par for me in terms of good microbrew beers. I'll drink them, yeah, okay, but I won't like it. And this and the black ale that I talked about before, which is no longer made, those two are my two favorite Summits by far. So, Saga, Beer Advocate gives it like a 98 out of 89 out of 100, sorry. So, Beer Advocate seems to like it too. And usually they don't rate bad beers highly. So sometimes they underrate good beers, but sometimes they don't really recommend terrible beers. So today we're on the topic of Fockers. I was just exchanging text messages with my ex-girlfriend, and so it's fitting that today we're talking about Fockers. Fockers is a short for fake autocockers, and this was a series of guns by a lot of different companies made in the mostly after 2000 era until about 2004, 2005 when cockers pretty much just died out as an actual gun. There was a lot of Fockers made from System X to AKA. I've got an AKA Focker, and the two guns that we have here on the show from Kevin QMTO on the show, obviously. So we'll talk about those. First off, I met Kevin at Living Legends, and that kid is the shit. He is the yin to my yang. As I was explaining to him, I usually do enough research on a gun, and I find that gun to which I want. And I will wait, and I will pay top dollar for that classic gun. The one that I want, not some other example. The one with just the aftermarket parts I want, the one with just the year and the stock parts I want, and just that 1 year, I'll go and buy that one, and then I'll be very happy with that gun. QMTO seems to have the opposite strategy, which is if it's under $200, I'll buy it. And I love it because he has a lot of these old school guns that just get forgotten because nobody wants to buy these old guns anymore. And so we have two examples of that on the show. You've seen other examples of that, like that Zap 600E or whatever that was on the show earlier. Just classic guns that are terrible, really. And there is a place for those in this world, and the place is Kevin's house. So anyway, thanks, Kevin, for not uploading that certain video that we took that one night. But Anyway, I'm going to rip on your taste on guns either way, so you already knew it was coming. I told you. So, anyway, we're going to talk about Fockers and regular cockers. So, as a general rule, Fockers are considered guns that were built on non-WGP machined bodies. After 2000 or so, WGP, this is a carnivore, it's obviously not a fake WGP. There's a little W, a little War Games W, you can kind of see it in there, in the breech, and that was a stamp they started putting on those guns to make sure that fakes didn't get out. But then the fakers figured out how to do that as well, and actually dissected this from what Sonny Lopez once told Mike, and Mike was talking to me about cockers one time. And he was saying that Sonny Lopez could tell a fake autococker from a real autococker after he took the barrel off. So that tells us that there's some feature inside the barrel of these guns, or inside the breech area, that distinguishes WGP from non-WGP. Now, if you take a look at my non-WGP gun here, you can see the bolt, right? That's the silver part that moves. But you can see that socket there where the autococker threading goes in and then it bottoms out. And there's nothing else in there. Now, on the WGP guns that I've seen recently, there is actually, you can see a second ring in there. It's like they just touched their boring bar into the material down here all the way deep into the socket. And I think that is the way to tell a true autococker from a Focker. Now, that being said, Fockers definitely go in quality, right? So this is an AKA Merlin. It's a Focker, but it's also an excellent gun. The System X guns were actually pretty good for the most part. I actually think those are pretty good shooters guns. But today we're going to talk about, on the show, a couple of bad Fockers. And it also links into some current events in paintball, too, because these guns were made by Michael Spurlock and companies that he was affiliated with, and that directly ties into the machine gun vapor and all this talk now of Michael Spurlock getting back into not just being an OEM anymore and just actually making his own brand. So anyway, these two guns, like I said, I borrowed from Kevin. They're both Fockers, terrible guns as well. So we'll first go through this one. This is a Dragonfly. The history of this company is Dragun was a company that was basically a knockoff company, like 32 Degrees or one of those companies, and they wanted to knock off an autococker, so they built this. It's called the Dragonfly. I mean, you can already recognize that it has counterfeit parts on it already. This trigger frame is like a direct knockoff of a die hinge frame. This ram here is like a direct knockoff of an STO ram. This LPR is one of the ways you can identify Dragun guns. It has the nipple coming out right up here in the base part here, this hex part, and then this is the seat and spring system. The other thing that you can identify Odyssey guns with is this terrible regulator. It's profiled like this, kind of to hold it. And then the other thing is it has an offset. The macro fitting does not go straight into the bottom. So, Dragun was a company for a year or so, independent of anything else. And they merged with Odyssey and produced like a company called like OGI or something like that. AGI, OGI, I don't know what it was. And then they split again like about a year and a half later. So they kind of end up, Odyssey, that they were the makers of the Halo at the time too. So you have like this gun copying company, and then the makers of the Halo. I don't know. It was just a bad idea to begin with, and for some reason they thought it was a good idea. But anyway, so they made this Dragonfly, and as you can see, it's a chunky motherfucker. That's the back block area. This gun has an inch wide back block, and you can see if I put them next to each other that this thing is substantially bigger and heavier. The other thing that's terrible about these is the trigger pull is just atrocious. As Kevin said, like when they want you to pull the trigger, you pull the trigger, motherfucker. Like, they don't want anybody short stroking this thing because the trigger is no joke to pull. It's like actually like borderline difficult to pull with one finger. That's how hard it is. So these things are just bad. It works like a cocker, obviously, right? But the dimensions are not the same. Nothing's the same. Some parts may fit, but just don't buy one. just don't buy one for any reason, for any amount of money. Don't buy one. So then we come on to the second copy Fokker that Dragun made. This is a substantially better gun. As you can see, it looks a lot better. It looks like a direct copy of the Oracle, which is a beautifully milled gun. And this is a pretty dang good copy of it. This came with an electronic trigger system, which this frame and this board is essentially taken straight off a gun that they made called the TES, the Tactical Electronic Sniper, which was basically a electronic spider with an eye. And remember, this was before the ion, so having eyes on a low-end gun was huge, because even at this time, Angels and guns like that, and Matrixes and stuff like that, didn't have eyes. So it was a pretty big deal. For about 3 months, everybody wanted a TES, and then they were exposed to be terrible guns at everything. So anyway, this trigger frame is basically part per part directly taken off that. It's actually not that bad, honestly. It's the board has got an LCD. It's got eyes. The main problem with it is the micro switch is just atrocious. Like this is me trying to walk the trigger. Just not gonna work. Versus, like, just to prove to you that I can walk the trigger. Like, that's my carnivore, right? I can walk triggers, and this thing is just bad at everything. We can also recognize the same regulator. It's just chrome this time. It's even the same LPR, just external milling's different. The nipple still comes out of the base there. Same RAM. So everything's the same pretty much as the Dragonfly. This is called the Dralian, by the way, or Dragun. I don't think I've ever actually heard someone in person pronounce this gun's name. So I'm going to call it a Dralin from now on. I don't know if that's right. Another funny thing about this gun is this looks like a CP1 piece, but it's not. It's fake. It doesn't have as many rungs up here, and the internal finish is not CP quality. So anyway, this is what Michael Spurlock, who worked for Dragun, I believe, at the time, maybe Odyssey. Maybe he switched companies at one point, because later he worked for Odyssey to make the Odyssey O2M, which is, I believe, what it was called. It's basically a fusion before DP even existed. It's literally part per part interchangeable with most fusions. Anyway, so this is where we get into the link to modern day, because this is what Michael Spurlock was doing in the early 2000s to mid 2000s, and ever since then I think he's kind of kept a low profile, and people have been using him as an OEM in Taiwan until now he decided he's going to build his own gun, and that's the machine gun Vapor. So you can see why a lot of us old schoolers are a little bit apprehensive about Spurlock re-entering the market after well, with his own company and his own gun, because we've seen what Spurlock can do, and that makes us worried. So anyway, you know what, we didn't even touch on the girlfriend versus ex-girlfriend, wannabe girlfriend conundrum. My phone didn't even ring. Maybe we'll save that for another episode, but either way, we've got Summit Saga Imperial or India Pale Ale, and we've got Fockers, which, as I was telling you, Fockers really depend on the quality of the company that made them. If you recognize the name of the company that made it, it's probably okay to buy. If you don't recognize the name of the company that built it, don't buy it for any reason ever. Alright, well, you guys have a good one. Talk to you later.